Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. I am Michelle Zellner.
Hey guys, I'm Sasha Berscheid, and we are co-hosts of Be a Better Being, the podcast where we teach you how to become better beings or just tell you about us. Today is a little different. Normally, we have our incredible host, Michelle, leading the way and just being bold and beautiful and herself. But today, I get to do it. So, hey, Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time to truly, honestly be vulnerable, raw, authentic, and be you.
Of course, that is my pleasure. That's the whole theme of the Be a Better Being podcast, right? So I'm ready. Ask away. Let me tell you all about me.
Here's the deal. So normally when this happens, right, we will have something planned and all this, but you know what? Michelle is like literally one of my favorite people to ever exist. And so when we started this, I was like, okay, that's it. I have got to show everyone your inner crooks and crannies and all of those places that you don't want to show people, because you know what? Here's the thing. That's what made you, right? True. Yeah. All those shadows, all of those difficult moments, all of those times where all you wanted to do was curl up and cry and hide, that made you who you are. Yes or no?
Well, for sure. And even times that didn't make me want to curl up and hide and cry, they just were pivotal decisions or moments or life choices, or even things that weren't choices, things that just happened. And then you figure out how to go forward from it. So yeah, that is called life, my friends. And I am 5 decades into this life. So a lot has happened, I'd say.
Okay. So my first question to you is this. When I was in my 20s, I guess I should preface this. When I was in my 20s, I was frightened for aging, right? Getting older. And then now that I'm in my 30s, I'm like, whoa, why didn't anyone tell me it gets better? Right? So you have 5 decades. Let's take each one apart. But before we do that, tell me, which one's your favorite?
I can't.
You can't.
I can't, because you think every decade's your favorite, and then you get to the next year and you're like, that was pretty awesome.
That's so exciting. Yeah. So for me, when I hear that, it's just like, it's only going to get better. How can life possibly get better?
It's true. At least that has been my experience. I recognize that is not everybody's experience, but I've always had a different, just a different view of aging. Aging happens. It happens. So I don't try to fight it or resist it. It is what it is. And so it's up to me to do what I want with that process. And so I have that open mind and recognize that so much of my experience is going to be based upon the choices that I make. And I'm in charge of those, and good, bad, or ugly, once I've made them, they're going to lead me one way or another. And even if it leads me to a place that isn't awesome, it has certainly allowed for that learning opportunity. So that's kind of the perspective I've taken. I would say I didn't really come to that perspective probably until my mid 30s. And then even at that point, just reflecting upon the various things that I went through in life. And I will say, I have had a very charmed life. I really have. And I used to feel bad saying that, and I don't feel bad. It's just the way it is. I've been very, very fortunate. I feel very grateful for the upbringing that I had, but I also know that I had a part in that because I also made hard choices. Mm-hmm. And so, when I talk about the challenges that I faced, to somebody, they'll be like, that's not even a challenge. What is she talking about? And yet I know that my challenges are ones that a lot of people also face. And yet it's hard either way, because your reality is your reality. Mm-hmm. And if I compare myself to somebody else's reality and then diminish what I'm going through, well, that's not going to help me. And so when I look at, the challenges, I mean, even as a young person, you don't know any different. You just know that like, this is really hard and I don't know what to do with it or how to behave or how it's going to turn out. And yet those are really amazing learning lessons that you might not even know you're learning something until you reflect upon it later.
I agree. There were so many good nuggets to unpack there. I want our listeners to get to know you the way I have gotten to know you. So taking these 5 decades, let's break them up into the most pivotal or turning points, or the highlights or the lowlights, right? Because like for me, when we spoke about me, it was a lot more like lowlights than highlights. But let's talk about them, right? Like let's unpack the journey of Michelle and the journey of the becoming a better being. So if you don't mind, let's just go all the way back to the first 10 years of your beautiful being.
Yeah. So I would say, the real pivotal or, most impactful experience at my young life was my time in gymnastics. I got kind of the gymnastics bug because one of my girlfriends, we all lived out in the country, and her mom decided that me and my sister and her sister should all do gymnastics. So we had to drive 30 minutes because that's where the closest place was, 30 minutes into town to go to this gymnastics class twice a week. And I would see these other girls working out on the other side of the gym doing really awesome stuff. And I was like, I want to do that. And, I was just part of this big kind of rec center group. And the gentleman who ran that big program, when I said that to him, he said, oh, well, I don't know, they're really good. You have to try out for that team. And I was like, okay. And so it was a few months later that they were having some tryouts, and I told my mom I wanted to try out. And I can still remember laying in bed. So in my house when I grew up, we're in the upstairs bedrooms or down the hall, and the kitchen is like down the hall, and it's the old fashioned phone ringing, like phone on the wall kind of thing. Most people don't even know what that is anymore, but it was late. It was well past bedtime, but it was like Christmas the next morning. I just had so many butterflies, and I heard the phone ring, and I heard my mom say, oh, okay, I'll tell her in the morning. And I bolted out of bed. And I was like, did I make it? Did I make it? And my mom was, yes, you did. I still get emotional talking about it, which is crazy because it was such a big deal. It was kind of that first thing I think that I remember that I really wanted, and that I had to prove myself to be there. So that was the beginning. And then interestingly enough, my kind of next really pivotal moment happened maybe a week later. So I show up to that first practice, and all the newbies kind of line up, and the coaches tell you, what your strengths are, what they want you to work on, who you are, why you're there. We're girls from all different places. We're all different communities. And it was a husband and wife team. And the wife, Phyllis, she said, now Shelly, that's how she referred to me right off the bat. Nobody else does. So, but I loved it. I was like, oh, that's so special. She said, now Shelly, so Dale didn't really think you should be here. So Dale is the husband, right? And she said, but I said, oh no, that girl's got grit. She's got heart. She's got passion. She is going to be here. She's going to be good. And so that's why you're here. So you don't have a lot of the natural talent, but I know with hard work, you're going to be great. But all my 8-year-old ears heard was, Dale doesn't think you should be here. And at that time, of course, when I'm 8, I don't know that I processed it in any kind of way other than like, okay, well, I'll show Dale, right? Which I did. I turned out to be relatively good. I mean, for the time, I was competitive. I did well. And there was like this, this dynamic with your coaches. It turned out to be something I did very full time, very quickly turned competitive. And that turns into 3 or 4 hour practices, 5 or 6 days a week, pretty quickly. So literally for 10 years of my life, I spend more time with these people than I do with my own family, and they are my family. And, we had lots of ebbs and flows in our relationship and the dynamics and the good cop, good coach, bad coach, who's your favorite today and who's going to be tough love tomorrow. And I mean, so many amazing life lessons that I learned from the leotard and post leotard, that even in that time, I don't know that I really was learning them. I don't know that you really can know that when you're 12 or 15, you know. So I'd say, you know, one of the other really pivotal moments was when I decided I really didn't want to be there anymore. And that was in 8th grade. And so I told my parents and I told my coaches that, you know, I really didn't want to be here anymore. I was going to quit. And they talked me out of it. And in retrospect, I'm really glad they talked me out of it, because I really wasn't ready to give up. That's a whole other story of kind of learning upon reflection why that all felt the way it did at that time. But I was really glad that they talked me out of it, because I went on to have some really great experiences and great competition years and developed more great relationships and learned more great lessons. But then there did come a time, it was right after my junior year of high school. I competed at regionals and injured my knee, and, you know, headed into my senior year. I knew I wasn't going to do this in college. I never wanted to do this in college. It was never a desire of mine to try to get a scholarship. I just love gymnastics. Competition, so not my thing, which is something I recognized later.
Which I'm going to stop you really quickly. For the learner or for the listeners, you guys, like, when I found that out, my mind was blown. Like, how is this person who is so well-rounded, who is just can do all these things, like, how are you not competitive? Like, it just, to me, it blew my mind, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was an interesting revelation for myself when I realized that. And I didn't realize that for actually quite some time. And it was just a whole bunch of different life lessons along the way that was like, oh, that's actually not a value of mine. And it's not good or bad. It just is, right? Everybody's different. And so I decided that I just wanted to be done. I wanted to end while I still loved gymnastics. I didn't see myself like pushing myself to battle back through injury, to have some kind of one last year, because who knows. And one of my teammates that I was really close to was also gone. She went on to another gym. There was, you know, there wasn't a lot of joy in the gym. And so this time I didn't tell anybody. Instead, I sat in Spanish class. It is October 18th, 1989, senior year of high school. I literally remember it like yesterday. Our Spanish class, our Spanish teacher, basically it was study hall. So gave me a good opportunity to write a letter to my coach telling her that, you know, I was done, and, you know, I won't be coming back to the gym. So the scared little girl in me drove and put that note on her windshield. I couldn't face her in person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I drove home, and my mom said, well, don't you have practice? I was like, no, I don't have practice. Oh, well, did Phyllis cancel it? No, Mom, I don't have practice. What do you mean? I said, well, I'm done. I quit. Well, that didn't go over too well. And yet I knew it was the way I needed to do it, because I knew if I had told anybody, they were going to talk me out of it again, because I didn't want to let people down. And you know, when you do things for other people, it doesn't work out well. So I think that was the first really, really proud big girl decision I made. And it was hard. Oh my God, so hard. And I, you know, went back and forth on it for many weeks. Like, okay, what do I do with myself now? Normally I go to practice, and now what do I do? I was lost in a lot of ways. And yet I also felt like I was free in a lot of ways. So it was a really interesting time. And every year they did an exhibition, kind of warm up to competition season. So a fundraiser exhibition. And I was usually kind of spotlighted in some way, had a kind of spotlight feature in it. And it was about a month or 6 weeks after I had quit, and I decided just to go and be a spectator. I didn't tell anybody I was going, and I kind of was like the stalker in the back, like looking through the window, and like, oh my God, I don't want them to see me, but I want them to see me. Like, I don't know how to do this. And then after it was all over, I went up to my coaches, and it was just floods. And still, I mean, how many years later? Crazy, right? 30 years later, I still get emotional about it, because it was really important to me.
You're gonna make me cry. You're gonna make me cry. You're gonna make me cry.
here we are.
Here I go.
We told you this was going to get messy. It was important to me to still have those relationships with Phyllis and Dale because they meant a lot to me. They taught me so much.
So one thing that we didn't incorporate in the question when I asked you is so you said you grew up in the country, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for our listeners to know why this relationship with this faux mom and pop coach, what part of the United States was this in? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So I grew up in small town, Wisconsin.
Okay.
My dad is from upstate New York. My mom is from the Netherlands. They met when my dad was stationed in the Air Force. And that's a whole funny story of how they all came to be together. And as of today, 56 years later, beautiful. Still blissfully in love and amazing.
Beautiful.
Yes, it is very beautiful.
But sorry.
No, go ahead.
So for those of you who are not from the Midwest, it's very important that you understand the dynamic of the Midwest. It's very family, very don't get offended, Midwesterners, very vanilla. I'm also from the Midwest, right? Like I'm from Nebraska, but for those of you who grew up in the Midwest, who were athletes, who did get shipped away, you really truly do become family. And so for me to hear that part of your story where you said you even grew the guts. I mean, I don't know what else to call it besides guts, to go in and sit there and watch your family compete and watch your mom and dad coach. That's where I get the tears also, because that's just something that I can feel. I can feel the passion. Yeah. I can feel how much you loved them. And I don't want to say that listening or watching you tell that story, it's almost like half you felt like you disappointed mom and dad.
Absolutely.
The other half watching you or listening to you tell your story, you can see that pride. You see that little girl, I can do this and I need to do this.
Yeah. And the thing is, I had an amazing family life. I had amazing, and still do have amazing, supportive, nurturing parents. Mm-hmm. So it's not like my coaches were a replacement for some void that I had. I had the abundance in all ways. And I know I'm incredibly lucky for that. Some people don't get it from any place. And I had it pouring in from multiple places, which kind of made it even harder in some ways, right? And so, that was just really big. And I'm very happy to say that to this day, Phyllis and Dale we're close. I'm hoping to go visit them. They're officially retired years ago now. And it's actually on my 2022 vision board to go visit them.
How cool.
Phyllis is from the Denver area, so she would come here to visit family. And since I've lived here for 25 years, we've gotten to see each other over the course of years. And anytime I would go back home to visit, I would always make a trip into the gym. And I mean, these people were so important in my life. And I think that was, a big reason why I wanted to end when I did, because I didn't want any kind of yuckiness and yucky feelings about something that I put so much time and energy into and something that I got so much out of. Now, mind you, it wasn't all great. There were some things about gymnastics that led to tremendous struggle for me. Some things about some of the dynamics, whether it was with teammates or with coaches, that led to some challenges. But all of those things are what led me to be who I am. So again, looking back on it, I have zero ill feelings in any kind of way for any of that. In fact, I think I'm grateful for all of those experiences, because that is how and why I've been able to do what I do and to help others with the challenges that they find themselves facing too.
So assuming that you were just this natural athlete, right? You just walked in and you were like, hey, stars here. That's not how.
No, in fact, that was my teammate. And it was one of those, and that's one of the things, like, it's not fair. It's not fair. Jessica can literally not show up to practice all week, and then she can go and compete and win everything. And here I am busting my ass every day, and I don't compete well. And so it doesn't show, except I'm really good.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fair. And so that was kind of like, well, it's not fair. Woe is me, right? So that kind of attitude and mindset definitely set in. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that mindset is, in my opinion, cancerous. And the moment that you realize that life isn't fair and you accept it, it's a game changer. You know,
Yeah.
you can move on, and you can find your you, and you can really dig in deep to figure out what it is that you need to do in order to become the best being that you can be, instead of dwelling and saying, well, Jessica can eat whatever she wants and move however she wants, and I want to be Jessica. Here's the deal, y'all. You can't be Jessica. You can't. You can never be me. I can never be you. And that's the most beautiful gift that we all have, is the gift of uniqueness.
Agree.
So
Speaking of life not being fair, I would say probably one of my next big life moments happened with a relationship. My first very serious relationship. Met him when I was in college in Hawaii. He was in the Army, and got engaged, and was, I was, I don't know, 24 or 5, whatever, planning this life. And after I graduated grad school, I came to Colorado for grad school. And after I graduated, moved down to Texas, which is where he was stationed at the time, ready to go start this life. Gave up a lot because I had already established a pretty thriving personal training practice. And so I gave up everything to go be with my future. And about 3 months after being there, I get a phone call from this girl that I actually knew from back in Hawaii. And she said, is David there? And I said, well, no, he's in the Army. I mean, his schedule is like the middle of the day that she's calling, right? And I said, why? She's like, well, it's good that he's not there, because there's something I want to tell you. There's something you should know. I was like, okay. She's like, so me and David's child will be turning 1 next month. And I just thought you should know that before you married him. Okay. So David and I have been together over 3 years. So you can do the math, right? I mean, clearly there is extracurricular activities going on. Wow. So, I mean, just like, what? This doesn't happen to me. This is like Jerry Springer garbage. What? And so he had been gone for a week because he was out doing field training. And a couple hours after that phone call, he came in from being gone for a week. And I was like pretty numb. He's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? I was like, how's Darius? Tell me about Darius. How's he doing? And I mean, you would have thought the guy just like literally lost his mom, his dad, his best friend all at once. I mean, the devastation, because he knew, like, that is probably the biggest mistake I've ever made. And so it was one of these, like, okay, a lot of soul searching, a lot of figuring out, what do you do with this? How do you proceed through this? I knew the moment I called my parents that it was over, because this is not how the Zellners do life. Yeah. You don't do this. This is not a standard. I mean, I have incredible role models as parents of how life should be, how a marriage should be, how a couple should be. And this is like the far extreme away from that. So spent about a week there figuring things out. And it was probably in a lot of ways the best week David and I ever had together, as well as like the most heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching, difficult week. He had a 3-year-old from a high school thing who had grown to just love me as her mom. And I had to tell her that I wasn't going to be her mom. And that was, I mean, gut-wrenching. Whatever my daddy did to make you mad, he'll fix it. I promise. This little 3-year-old telling me this, right? I mean, God. But, as soon as I made that phone call and told my parents, here we go again. No questions asked. Dad flew to Dallas, rented a trailer to hitch to the car, drove my car back with the trailer, 20-hour drive back to Wisconsin. Didn't say a word about anything, rolled into the driveway, and there's mom. And that's when it all came out. Just, wow. Like, okay, here I thought I knew how I was going to live my life. And now I'm back in Wisconsin in the middle of winter or headed into winter. It was early October, actually. I still remember that date too. September 25th was the day that I got that phone call. Yes, that's one thing you'll know about me is things get very etched in stone. But yeah, knowing I'm headed into winter in Wisconsin, like what am I gonna, and now I'm living back with mom and dad. Like, really? I've been on my own forever. Like, I felt like such a loser and such a failure, such a disappointment in so many ways.
And you were a baby.
I mean, you don't think so at that age. You think you're so grown up and you know everything and you got it all figured out. This could be my life and it's gonna be great. And I got this great job.
And you're a baby.
And you're a baby. And again, grateful, fortunate that I have amazing parents who were just there to love me and let me make my mistakes and figure things out and support me. But a few months of like, okay, what am I going to do? I could go try to be a personal trainer. And so again, rural Wisconsin, back in the 90s, mind you, personal training was not a thing yet. This is when, incredibly wealthy people and actresses, that they have trainers, not normal people. But I thought I'm going to give it a go. So I ended up, kind of worming my way into this gym. Again, it's like a 40-minute drive because we live out in the country. And they were paying me $14 a session, which, I mean, now it doesn't sound like a lot now, but back then I was making $40 a session, which was a ton of money for me at that time. I mean, it was just gut blows in so many ways. And so after a few months of that, I was like, okay, I got to figure out what's next. So I had made some great relationships in Texas in the short time that I'd been there. And I liked it. And so I thought, well, I could move to Austin. It's far enough away, but it's close enough to these friends that I'd made. Or I could go back to Colorado. I'd go back to Boulder and probably pick up all the clients that I left. And so I remember standing in the kitchen and telling my dad, okay, so here are my two choices. And when I said, I'm thinking about moving to Austin, the look of terror on his face, because that was very close to where David still was. And I was like, or Boulder, or Boulder. Boulder's great too. I think I'll go back to Boulder. Okay, that's what I'm doing. So yeah, I moved back to Boulder and just kind of tried to start life over and was welcomed with amazing love for all the clients and friends that I'd left, like as if I'd never been gone. And yet they're like, oh my gosh, you're back. You guys are moving here. And I'm like, well, not exactly. So, going through that first real major betrayal and again, pivotal decision, like, what do you do? But it goes back to living your standards and living your values. And as sorry as he was, as many promises as he made to do better and be better and this and that, we're going to work on this and that. And as forgiving as I wanted to be, the bottom line is you lied to me, you cheated on me. You have two children that aren't mine. This is not how I'm going to start my life.
Right. And one of the things that I'm excited to talk about later is the moving of Michelle Zellner. And the finding of Michelle Zellner in the moving, right? Because we talked about Wisconsin. We didn't talk anything about Hawaii.
Yeah.
And the importance of Hawaii and who you are.
Oh my God.
We didn't, we completely skipped over Hawaii, which I'm so excited. I think that we need to just keep Hawaii for its own, unless you want to talk a little bit about how you have found your you and you're in heaven in Hawaii. But then, Hawaii and then Boulder and then Texas and then Wisconsin. And it's like, you think you're 26 and you have it 25, 26, you have it all figured out. And it's just like, no, baby girl, you're just starting out. And that's something that I wish I would have in hindsight been able to have someone tell me, because I didn't grow up till I was 26. that's when I got sober. And as the listeners will find out about my story, I moved a lot. For me, when I moved, it was because I was running or trying to find. For you, it was because you found heaven, you found home, you know what I mean? So
yeah, we can definitely talk about how you connect to a place.
Yes.
Because I think that is a very unique and kind of interesting conversation to have. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to kind of fast forward because I know I've been talking for a long time. We don't want to bore the listeners with too long of an episode here, but so go and be single and have fun for a lot of time, lots of years, work hard, really started to thrive and built a thriving business. That was, again, kind of going back, we'll talk about maybe the evolution of Better Beings as a business, but
we have to.
Yeah.
Because that's how we're here.
Yeah, it actually turns 25 this year, which is another reason I think the podcast is great. It's a really nice gift to my business and hopefully to the listeners as well. But I thought, okay, well, here I am. So I'm going to make my way here, right? And relationships, yes, no, don't really care. I'm independent. I'm financially sound. I got it. Like, do I want to be with somebody? Of course, who doesn't? But am I going to settle? No. And so going along, happily living my life, and then boom, enter Travis out of nowhere. And like, boom, out of nowhere, holy cow, this is what my whole life lesson and journey has been waiting for. And it was amazing. And we had an incredible love story. That's all I can say about it. And then it was incredibly tragic. So that is, again, probably a whole other podcast, but my life with Travis at this point is a tiny blip of my life, but in the moment it felt like it was my entire life. And part of the reason it felt like that is because I actually, in my soul, believe that I am connected to him on a very different level. And that connection remains today, even though he has been out of my life, very solidly out of my life for many, many, many years. But that connection is still there, whether I want it to be or not, it is. So that's a whole other story we can talk about too.
I think we have to talk about these connections and what it means. We have to, because our listeners have those relationships too.
Yeah.
And you're not alone, you guys. You really are not alone.
No, you're not. So so here I was, 35, getting married. It was amazing. 35 years old, getting married. It was beautiful. And then 38, here I am now again, a failure, because now I am one of the first people, one of the only people in my family, the only person in my immediate family that is divorced. And that is not something that you do. That is not something that that's just not what you do. And oh my God, like, again, what a failure. How could I have been so wrong? How could I have made such a mistake to not see that this was going to end up this way, right? All this self-doubt and all the things that you go through. And I remember there's one of my professional contacts. He ended up being, and I didn't even know it at the time, but he was the very first person I actually said the words, "I'm divorced," to, outside of my very immediate circle. And it came out organically in a like a weird social setting. And I'm so thankful for him. I actually I write about all this in my book, by the way, listeners. If you want all the details,
pick it up, guys.
Yeah, pick up my book. But I believe in my soul that everybody is in your life for a reason. And I know this particular person was that person that I was supposed to say that to first because of who he is. And the response that I got from him was exactly the one that I needed. And so, I mean, just so much. So, I mean, those I would say, so that brings us up to, 39 years old. So I'm already over a decade past that. But I would say if I had to pick the big pivotal moments, those were it. No doubt about it. Yeah. So I think we can probably wrap it up there. There's clearly more in the last 10 years, but nothing earth shattering like that. Thankfully, things have been pretty smooth and even without, now certainly there's always hard decisions and hard choices, and just recently made some very hard professional decisions. But yeah, we'll have conversations on that stuff too. But I think as far as like life changers, you make one choice, your life is going to go one way. You make a different choice in that moment, your life is going to go a different way. And Sliding Doors is one of my all-time favorite movies. Most people are way too young to even know about that movie. It's a Gwyneth Paltrow movie from, I think, like 1998. And literally in one version, it's the parallel versions of the movie. In one version, she just makes the train and her life turns out one way. And in one version, she just misses the train and her life goes a different way. And it's just, I always think about those things like, wow, one, what if, like, how would things have been different or the same? Because sometimes two different choices will still lead you to the same outcome. And that's always fascinating to me too.
I agree. I have been really leaning into that feeling and thought of the, I think life, the universe, God will continue to redirect you to where you're supposed to be. It's going to be up to you to take which path is in front of you, but ultimately they're all going to lean up where you're supposed to be. And so when you said, that person was in your life at the time and he said exactly what you needed to hear, or the decision was exactly what you needed to make, that's for everyone. That's not just a Michelle Zellner. That's not just a Sasha Berscheid. This is in everyone. And if you take a step back, you're going to realize, wow, my life was so chaotic, but wow, it was so beautiful.
Yeah. I've adopted the belief, and I adopted it a long time ago, that whatever is happening is what is supposed to be happening. You might not like it. You might not have asked for it. You might not agree with it. You might question it, but it's happening. So clearly it is supposed to be happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it, and that's the thing. And I think so often we do second guess ourselves. We doubt, we judge. And once a choice or decision has been made, or, you've been affected by something, then that's your now. And then what, right? Because that's all you have is I have now, and then I have what I do in the face of now. And, you either reach the outcome or things go the way you thought they would, or you have lots of opportunities to learn and grow along the way, should you choose to take those opportunities to learn and grow.
Amen. I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much. Another spinoff that I want to really dig into is how you became so passionate about becoming a better being.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that I have got to present to everyone. Like, where did this journey start from? Who inspired? Obviously, Phyllis had a part in it, but then at the same time, there's so much more, because you could have just been like, okay, I'll stop here. But now you're trying to really dig into corporate and just revolutionize the world and just say, hey guys, let's do this together. You don't have to do it alone. So that's one thing that I'm super excited within our journey to unveil the dynamics behind being a better you. One thing that we did not share is the book name. That you have two wonderful books.
Yes.
If you can you plug those? Shameless plug, guys. Shameless plug.
We will shamelessly plug, and then I'm going to take over and wrap us up, because I know you and I could go on forever and ever. So shameless plug. In fact, they're right there.
There you go. For those of you who aren't watching on YouTube, she's pointing to her beautiful bookcase.
So the main book is The You Revolution, The Journey of a Better Being. So it's basically all the class content that I teach in corporate and in individual wellness and personal growth trainings. And then The Journey of a Better Being is my story threaded through it. And then a kind of tandem handy guidebook is the PFF is Your BFF Handbook, a simple guide to fueling your busy body. My journey and my relationship with food is a whole other story we'll get into. And so the nutrition book I wrote, and the PFF is Your BFF trademark phrase, is life-changing, and it's something I'm very passionate about. And so I wrote a book about it to help people just embrace the reality that eating healthy is not that hard. So those are the two. Thank you for letting me shamelessly plug those, my dear.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for taking the lead today. That was fun, I have to say.
It was fun.
And for all of you listening and watching, thanks for bearing with my emotions today, but that's what you're going to get. So we warned you. Here you go. You get it right off the bat. But yeah, thank you everybody for listening. And to you, my dear friend, wish you a wonderful day. And everybody, I hope that you will go and be a better being today.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.